Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar with myABLEdriver. My name is Emily. I'm the Senior Campaign Lead here at Birchal. And just before I introduce you to Sean, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are coming to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. So today I'm joined by Sean Bassett from myABLEdriver. So myABLEdriver is working with Birchal on their upcoming crowdsource funding offer. A few of you might be unfamiliar with what crowdsource funding is. You might know it as CSF or equity crowdfunding, but it's a relatively new form of fundraising here in Australia. It started in around 2018 that allows startups and small businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors, as well as wholesale and sophisticated investors through an online platform such as Birchal. So instead of seeking funding from traditional sources such as banks or venture capitalists, companies can turn to the general public, and often that's their communities, in exchange for equity in their business. So Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for the offer. I do just want to remind everybody who's here today that the information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice or a recommendation to invest. So I would implore you to do your own research and always consider the general CSF risk warning and offer document for investing. If you do need any further information, it is available at birchal.com. Now, how today's session is going to run, I'll hand over to Sean in a minute, who'll give a little bit of an overview about myABLEdriver, where they've come from, and what they're looking to achieve with this raise before we go to a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, you can see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A box. So please pop any questions in there and we'll get to those at the end. We're also recording today's session, so if you do need to jump off early, a recording will be sent around. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Sean.
Thanks, Emily. Well, very new to me doing this stuff, so let's hope that it's we can show the passion and the emotion behind what this business is actually about. So unfortunately, the way that the documents work and web portals and so on, very difficult to get that emotional component across. So hopefully by this being a face-to-face almost type environment, we'll be able to paint the picture pretty clearly. I guess one of the key things about myABLEdriver is we're not just making widgets or selling gimmicks. This is real work. Our focus is actually on our people. They are very clearly our purpose in all of this, and they'll remain the number one driver of the entire concept. Clearly, we're in it to create a profit. That's the underlying benefit of the business, but we think that we've found the magic to close the loop across society, corporate Australia, both emotionally and, more importantly, commercially. And by doing that, we can close that entire circle from employment to transitional business function for the employees. We shift the focus for our end client, who are primarily corporates, and then we're able to actually produce a profit at the end. So that's the end game. So we've built a platform for a potential commercial behemoth, really, with good at its core. That's the main thing, is that its scalability is only restricted by our desire for growth. And because good is at the basis of everything that we do, our traction with commercial partners, in particular the last 10 weeks since we started aggressively, well, not even aggressively, we started to actually promote outwards, the traction's been really good. So let's hope that the Birchal campaign's equally beneficial. So this is really about showing our why, my personal why I built it in the first place, but what it is that we've put in place to then generate commercial decisions, not just emotional ones. So the offer document, which will be released pretty soon, is good. In fact, it's very good. But at the end of this webinar, hopefully everyone who's involved will actually be calling, texting, emailing everyone they know to get on board, because this actually fills in the gaps that we can't deliver on a piece of paper or a web portal. So I guess that's my number one driver for putting myself out there on a webinar, which I've never done before. So there'll be elements of telling the story that I'll get emotional about. It's been an emotional journey along the way, getting it to this point. And I've pretty much lived it 24/7 since the middle of 2017. So COVID was a massive pin in our balloon, but the why is the reason why why we're rebooting this thing post COVID. I'll try and give as much information as we can without, the detail that we're pretty much not allowed to give via the ASIC rules, but people will be able to actually see the detail, well, enough detail to be able to make some pretty clear decisions or conclusions, I think. So where did it all begin? It actually all stems right back to 2017. Like, this wasn't something that I thought when I was a child that when I get bigger, I'll build this thing. It certainly wasn't that at all. And it's not some stroke of genius. It's literally come from observing things that are going on, listening to people, taking all of that information and trying to then join the dots to build something which I think is pretty special. And it's an amazing platform. Like, literally our scalability is only restricted by how big we actually want it to get. So in 2007, Louis Rowe, who is the youngest son of one of my closest mates, Trevor, he was knocked off a motorcycle in Thailand, broke his back, and just had a terrible time when he returned back to Australia. He was 21 years of age, in the prime of his life, and everything was snatched away. And then eventually, at some point inside that first 12 months, he just went, you know what, I'm not going to be a pensioner the rest of my life. So he went back to university, got his marketing degree, got a job. He's now married. He's got a couple of kids. Like, life is just significantly better for Louis because he made that decision. So I then fast forward to 2016, I had a health scare, which led me to assess a lot of stuff about my life, and primarily what was going to be my legacy. Like, it wasn't life-threatening, my health scare, but what was going to be my legacy moving forward. And so myABLEdriver became a primary focus. How could I build a business that helped people like Louis, who didn't necessarily have the ability to go back to university and get a degree? So how could I give these people essentially a purpose? But it started out as an income, right? So how do we actually build something that means that it's accessible basically to everyone, even if they had a disability or they've come from a disadvantaged background? First Nations people who are just not given a chance. How do we actually target their well-being, both financially and emotionally? And that's become our number one purpose. And so what we've built is something that actually fills the gaps, and it's really the magic that makes it work. So in the latter half of 2017, I actually went and drove Uber for 3 months just to see what the landscape really looks like. And for someone from my background, sort of going to that level, it gave me a real understanding as to what the general public are hoping to get out of, this travel component, but also, what are the pitfalls And what does the financial model really look like? Because at the end of the day, we need, in this environment, we need our staff to be paid at least at the award rate. It's not a charity. We're trying to actually grow their self-esteem and give them the ability to get their own life back in order. We don't do it for them. We just literally, we give them the vehicle to do it. There is a pun intended there. So I registered the business name in 2018. We incorporated in 2019, and we had steady growth off the back of friends that I knew. They may have been CEOs of businesses, etc. I spoke to them and said, can you in fact help us get some of these people into work? And for the most part, we were pretty lucky. So we called, I had mates in IBM, a large IT consultancy, DB Results. We had clients in Visi, and we grew exponentially. October 2019 to March 2020, we had grown an enormous amount, to the point where I thought we've actually made it. Our strategy and cost model had been proven by having this pre-booked scheduled work function. We knew where we had to have cars and drivers at what point in time. So we didn't have all of this wasted time waiting for on-call demand. So October and November were both really big. The normal December, January downturn in business travel in particular, because of Christmas and school holidays, was to be expected. But then, of course, well, not of course, but in February and March, we exploded straight back to our November numbers, which was fantastic to see. March 13th, I was literally sitting in my local cafe looking at the volume of work for the next 3 to 4 weeks, and we were at 96% capacity. Now we can actually run at a higher rate than that, but it leaves us slightly exposed if there's traffic snarls or clients are late to the car or whatever. But the model that we've built means that 100% we've actually got space available, and we leave that there for our drivers so that they're not under pressure, and just in case something goes wrong. But of course, Friday the 13th, 2020, COVID hit. 8:30 in the morning, I remember it as clear as day. I was listening to the radio whilst having a coffee and looking at all of these stats of our business moving forward. We were chockers, and they cancelled the Australian Formula One Grand Prix. And in the space of 2 hours, everything was gone. Literally, we'd gone from this, we've made it, to everything's just the pin in the balloon. It was dead. And so that was pretty devastating, because the 17th of March, I was actually due to sign a heads of agreement with a large corporate. They were going to help fund us to rebound. Now, that is almost still on the cards, when I haven't actively chased that heads of agreement again, specifically because of what transpired then over the next few years. So we'd learnt that the pre-book service works. We'd learnt that we control the number of vehicles and etc. on the road, and therefore we were aware that every single job basically runs at around about 24% margin. Now, our competitors, taxis and rideshare, they don't have that capability, primarily because they're on demand. And so they have to just sit and wait for work, whereas all of our stuff is pre-booked. So that gives us a strategic advantage that they just can't copy. So as our demand increases, and we put more cars on the road with more drivers, our profitability actually goes up. And that's because we have less wasted time. So if we drive someone to the airport and drop them off, and then we've got someone landing 15 minutes later, we don't have cars driving all over the place. They're literally just picking up the next client. And so our margin in our sweet spot is around about 55%. If we go to that above 100% capacity, it does jump to 62%, but as I said earlier, we're exposed. So we tend not to go into that space at all, just because it could be dangerous. So when we add in the magic, it's a pretty special business model. And the magic really comes from the fact that these employees that we're taking on board, they have a story to tell, and they're encouraged to tell the end client as much as they are prepared to give. So some of our staff have got a disability, some are First Nations, some have just been long-term unemployed, and we've got some stuff in the pipeline that means that the core number of people that we draw from is actually going to increase significantly. But the real benefit of the business comes from the scheduling, because we know where we need to be and when. We can make sure that we don't have all of that wastage. But it also gives us the ability to control how we expand the business. And by control, I don't mean restrict it. I mean, how do we strategically build the business effectively to ensure that we don't create waste and that we don't have too many cars on the road, essentially, and make sure that we keep that hunger for our client base to actually book in advance. What did happen post COVID is that we established that despite the fact we'd had this enormous growth prior, during COVID, I had to sell virtually all of our car assets just to stay afloat. And post that, we've entered this period where it's this chicken or egg scenario. How do we bring clients on board if we don't have enough drivers and cars? Because we can't service them. But if I put on drivers and cars and we don't have clients, then we'll go out the door backwards. So it was very much about how do we actually juggle this whole process going forward. So by March of 2023, COVID was almost a thing of the past. And I mean, it took much longer here in Victoria than virtually everywhere else in the world to dissipate that bad taste in our mouth. Much longer than most places. But I actually refer to this next stage privately when I'm talking to people as the Drew effect. And it's actually very personal to me. I coach junior athletes at a pretty high level. They participate at state level, nationals, etc. We were at nationals in Brisbane, and the father of one of the kids that I coach, his name is Drew, he asked me about my day job, and I explained this chicken or egg plight that I faced. I wasn't sure how to reboot this business. I knew that it had a purpose, but literally COVID had depleted our cash, my energy, and certainly my enthusiasm. But this Drew effect was pretty powerful. He said to me, when we get back from nationals, we're going to sit down and work out how we make this thing work. It's a bloody brilliant idea, Basso. And I went, okay, if you believe in it, then I'm in, boots and all. So within a few months, we'd set a plan. We met with Birchal, sat down with Matt and Layla from the Birchal team, and they opened my eyes to the power of this commercial crowdfunding campaign and the potential to win shareholders and get people on board who support us. That's massive. But the Birchal campaign actually also gives us the ability to tell our story to a much bigger audience. And so it sort of fulfills two functions. We can potentially get a capital raise, and we also get people aware of our brand, and that can help drive the number of clients. Some of you out there might just be working for a big corporate who are desperate to fix the ESG profile of the business, that social component of the ESG. We do that for free, basically. And it comes about as instantly as switching from a cab or rideshare to using us, and the ESG is covered because of our social enterprise purpose. So, excuse me, the seed was definitely planted that we knew what we needed to do moving forward. And so over the last 15 months, we haven't actually done a lot around our growth activity of building our client base. Everything's been about this, getting the right structure in place to scale the business. So we went and designed, then built our own app using the same company, Glasshouse Venture Studios. They built the app for Silvertop taxis. So we went and we designed our own app, but we had their knowledge and flexibility to actually build it and make it work the first time, because they had all of this background knowledge of the Silvertop process. They introduced us to Silvertop so we could go and see how their back end side of the business operates. Now, they have literally thousands of cars on the road. We may target that, but that's not our endeavor at this point in time. So we've prepared and delivered essentially a launch pad forward that's positive, scalable, and sustainable moving forward. And that's been the number one activity basically in the last 12 to 15 months. And that strategy has proven to be quite beneficial. In the last 10 weeks, really the proof is in the pudding. We've rolled the app out to our existing client base, who have been super supportive of how well the app actually works and how easy it is. It's basically a 4-step process to book a ride for any time in the future. And they get a notification back to say, yes, it's been confirmed. Here's your driver name. This is the vehicle they'll be in, and here's their mobile number. That safety aspect is a big part of what it is that we've built. The fact that the client knows well in advance who the driver is and their mobile number, and that they're a staff member. They're not some contractor who you don't know, or they're switching IDs or whatever the case may be. This is literally, these are our staff. We've police checked them. They've all been vetted, interviewed, trained by us. They've all got working with children checks. Every single driver has a working with children check. If they fail that process, they can't work for us. It's that simple. Because at the end of the day, if one of these guys is going to be driving my daughter, I need to be certain that my daughter's safe. And so that then flows on to every single one of our clients, that function exists. So if you haven't already downloaded our app, certainly jump onto your app store, whatever it happens to be, myABLEdriver, and download it. See how easy it is. Start booking rides. That in itself will help us to deliver our purpose. We started with a social media company, V1 Studios. They've been amazing, producing our content and rolling out all of our structure to new and existing clients, which is helping to spread the word. And off the back of that, we've signed the City of Melbourne as a client and as an advocate of the business. So Lord Mayor Sally Capp endorsed our purpose and put her face to the campaign by having a photo shoot with one of our drivers and one of our cars out the front of Town Hall. And what that then drove is additional corporates to start looking at engaging with us. So we were mystery shopped by a partner at one of the big firms in Melbourne, Ernst & Young. And so we are still in the infancy stage, but we are discussing with them a partnership to fulfill their ESG profile and their social procurement. And because they have employees from Melbourne and Sydney basically flying backwards and forwards every single day of the week, that function plugs into what it is that we do in that early morning shift and the evening shift. We do operate all day. It's not all about corporate travel. Some of it is literally we're dealing with a couple of dialysis clinics where we're driving people to and from dialysis on a weekly basis, or 2 or 3 times a week, depending on the individual. So it's not all corporate to and from the airport. This is literally, if you'd rather travel in comfort with and safety, use us instead of using a cab or a rideshare. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we sign a letter of intent with the Police Veterans of Victoria for their ex-service members to be part of our chauffeur cohort. So they have about 5,500 ex-police force members who have now left the force. And some of them have some mental health issues relating to the job itself, PTSD, particularly if they're in the highway patrol group, etc. But they may have been in the force for 18 years or so, wearing a uniform. Protect and serve was their motto. And now all of a sudden they've got nothing. They're on work cover, or they've been pensioned out early, or whatever the case may be, and they've really lost their purpose. And so what we actually deliver for PVV is we hand them a purpose for that member group. And so literally the CEO of that of PVV, when I first met with him, he was like, "Are you guys an angel sent from heaven?" I'm like, "Mate, are you guys an angel sent from heaven for us? Because here's an unbelievably qualified group of individuals who can work as chauffeurs for us, and yet we're helping each other hand in hand." And that's the magic of this business, right? Is then we sell that. We don't have to sell it. We tell our client base that this is how the process works, and they are heavily invested in helping us to help these individuals. And at the end of the day, everybody wins. There are no losers in this scenario. So we provide this transitional pathway for these individuals who have gone from police officer to chauffeur working for us, and potentially one of our other clients who's traveling with us on a regular basis gets to know Jennifer, who's an ex-police officer, and the driver, and says, "Jennifer, why don't you actually come and work for us?" And so we actually encourage that to happen. We want those individuals to make that next step in their life and actually go and work for IBM or ANZ Bank or whoever it is that might be the person that's sitting in the front or back seat as a customer. And we will backfill that job with another person who needs this purpose to help them build their own self-esteem and their own identity, really. And it has this massive flow-on effect for their personal life, their family, their kids, their wife, their extended family, and so therefore the community overall. The Police Victoria, Veterans Victoria link is a pretty special one for us because their major sponsor is Crown Resorts. And so although we're in the infancy stage of the conversation with Crown, part of the concept there is that they will actively message, newsletter drop, and use their social media reach to all of their members and patrons to book with myABLEdriver, because we support Police Veterans Victoria. And because we support them and they support Police Veterans Victoria, we close the loop. And so actively, we've got this magic is working all the time across so many levels. So what does the magic really look like? Well, it's a labyrinth of solutions. It's on a personal level. So for our people, they've had difficulty getting into the workforce. We make that job easier. We only employ people that fit the criteria. If they're fully able-bodied and they don't come from within this pool, they've got loads of opportunity to get jobs. Our focus has to remain on this purpose-driven business. And so that's what we're there for. Long-term unemployed, First Nations people, obviously now police veterans, which may include Defence Force people in the coming weeks. That conversation is just about to start. And of course, people who are living with a disability. They lack a purposeful life. So our job is to actually try and help them in that process to rebuild their self-esteem and their own confidence. But they do that at their own pace, essentially one ride at a time, hence our catchphrase. And we provide this transitional employment pathway so that they can feel comfortable that they're in the job for as long as they need it. But if they get offered something better money, better employment structure, we're happy for them to move on and take on that job. From our corporate client perspective, clearly we tick the ESG, so that's environment, social and governance box. Everyone hears the acronym ESG. Not everyone knows what it actually stands for. So instead of paying for a taxi or a ride share, they simply do good by shifting their money, their dollar spend to myABLEdriver, and they get picked up by a chauffeur in a silver Mercedes-Benz. And the function of the job is at a much higher standard to what you get from a yellow cab or here in Melbourne, or a ride share. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, it seems. So we've got proof of the power of this stuff via our some of our corporate partners already, either engaged in City of Melbourne or in deep discussion with EY. And we provide this increased safe transportation options. You know, clients know their driver, the mobile number, the registration number, at least an hour before their ride. Their staff, not contractors. That whole process, you know, instills real confidence for our client base. At least if you jump onto our Instagram, you know, one of our clients actually talks to camera literally about how powerful this safety aspect is. And of course, you know, we're a reliable option. We turn up 15 minutes before the designated time. We're not late. We don't cancel jobs to make an extra fee. We've got no surges. Literally, if you book us for 11 a.m., we'll be there at 10:45. That's our focus, is to make sure that we're actually providing a better service than anybody else can, because we're pre-booked, and we're doing it at the same price as a cab, but we're delivering a limo level service. So our drivers get out and open the door for the client, front or rear, whichever it is. They load the luggage. And of course, you know, if they're a corporate client, let's just say they're a lawyer or an accountant and they're on a 6-minute pad. Not all of us follow that format, but we're aware of it. So you're running on this 6-minute pad. That's great. You can be traveling with us, billing the client that you're going to, whilst they work on another client on their laptop or their mobile phone, billing that client, and doing work that they just can't do whilst they're actually steering their own vehicle. So there's definitely some financial upside for our end client. And then, of course, there's the impact on society. So we're helping to shift some of these individuals from a cost center, whether that be, you know, they're on Centrelink payments or work cover or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, that's all paid for by taxpayers, but we shift them to a profit centre in terms of how the federal government sees it. These people go to being income taxpayers, not receiving some type of welfare benefit, whatever it happens to be. So, personally, I look at that and go, so you're welcome, federal government. We're fixing the problem for you. We end out with more engaged humans that both at a home level and in their circle of friends. And so they become on their own, well, not on their own, but the function of this purpose means that they develop this growth of their own. And so the Livio story, which is very clear on our website, that is common across all of our drivers. They get into this job. Initially, they're not aware of what the impacts are really going to be. And then at some point in sort of that 6, 7, 8, 9 week period, they have this epiphany that their life has in fact changed significantly. And so they don't all send a text message like Livio did, but they'll often call me or see me face to face and just go, I didn't think it was going to happen to me, but it has. My life has changed. Thanks for the job. And so that is what this is about. And so, the flow-on effect of all of that too is that we've got this driver sitting in the front who's prepared to share their story to people who may or may not have ever been in contact with someone First Nations, like on that level, or someone with a disability. And look, I know this from the Louis relationship, the way that wasn't a negative thing with people that had a disability prior to 2007, but I didn't really engage with them. And knowing Louis, seeing him before the accident, after the accident, I know that I treat people with a disability very differently these days. I look them in the eye, I say hello, truly engage with them. Now, if we can instill just part of that into every single person that rides with us as a client, so that they see the driver, whether they've got a disability or First Nations or whatever the factor may be, if they treat that person as a human, not as the disability, just treat them as that human being, that will flow on to their own family and friends, their kids, and we just shift this attitude across the nation. That's our plan, is that if we can do that, we will have achieved so much. Forget the financials. I mean, the financials are strong. We'll get to that. But this is literally how can we make a significant difference? So by the end of this, I hope that you are literally telling all of your family and friends, get on board this, because, it has so many touch points that are positive, and if you're a shareholder, you're part of the ride. So look, I think I've talked enough. You get the picture. Our purpose drives corporate Australia to engage with us to fulfill their ESG component. Our purpose has direct benefits to the people that we employ. And that's really our number one focus, is how do we help these people to get to where they need to be? We don't drive it for them, they drive it for themselves, but that's the power of it. Our purpose flows on to our coalface clients who help to help change their attitude towards these unbelievable humans that work for us, and hopefully the acceptance of all Aussies, improves. So our commercial model has significant financial upside, and so becoming a shareholder, what does it actually mean to us? Well, it means that we can accelerate our growth. We can fix this chicken or egg scenario almost instantly. By the time this campaign finishes, we literally just go, bang, this is what we can do starting tomorrow. We'll make further enhancements to our app to make that an even better process. Create a significantly bigger digital marketing budget to engage our larger audience, employ, train, and then retain staff essentially on the bench, so that as our marketing takes place, we've actually already got the staff trained. We're not doing it like we did pre-COVID, where as the growth came along, I then had to rapidly try and bring people on board and get them trained up. They'll literally be sitting there learning the job rapidly by watching others and seeing the impacts. So that's massively beneficial to us. We'll be able to purchase additional vehicles up front. So right now, the wage subsidy that comes from each of our employees from the federal government, we don't get that until 26 weeks in. We generally pull that money to then buy the next vehicle, which means that for every 3 employees that we've got, we can get another vehicle in 6 months' time, but this will accelerate that whole thing, which means that we can expand pretty rapidly. And to make it all happen, I need help. So I've got to literally get in place a stronger management team. This has been manageable, okay, until this point. But right now, if we're going to scale, we need an operations manager to handle what the day-to-day of what happens out in the field. And we need a HR manager to help us with that recruitment and training function of our people. And so I guess then beyond that, the ultimate reach of this target raise is that we can produce a pretty unique function, and that's this wheelie able vehicle. It's an EV with hand controls so that our chauffeurs are very unique in the chauffeur world. They live their normal life in a wheelchair. So literally, it could be, it won't be, but it could be a Dylan Alcott or a Kurt Fernley or Madison De Rosario. It could be a human being like that who literally can't walk, but they can drive a car. They have a full license to drive a vehicle with hand controls. We can put them behind the wheel and drive our client base around. And it's incredibly powerful. Often when I tell that function of what we're trying to achieve, I'll say to people, is the hair standing up on the back of your neck? Because clearly it is. It's really how we get to walk the talk. It is the good way to get from A to B. Literally, if your chauffeur cannot get a job elsewhere because they live their life in a wheelchair, but all of a sudden now they're working in this job where they have contact with a new individual essentially every hour, and it changes their life emotionally in particular, that's pretty magical. And so this is really what we're trying to achieve, how we actually get to that point. So tell everyone, get them onto the Birchal website, search for us, myABLEdriver, so that you can help us to deliver this magic. Our plan is right now to make this model work here in Melbourne, but rapidly expand nationally. If we can get to 300 cars Australia-wide, it's literally less than 1% of the total market. There's 44,000 cars out there doing taxi, limo, and rideshare work. If we can get 300 on the road, we can get a significant chunk for us of that $5.4 billion per annum. So we want to get people on board as soon as possible as shareholders, because believe me, shares in this business won't be this cheap ever again. And so I don't know, I think it's back to you, Emily. Questions, let's find out what people will actually want to know.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant. I think you really articulated so well your passion and your drive for your company, which is so inspiring for a lot of people. So what would you say the key differentiator is between you and another rideshare model, and why would people with, say, disadvantaged backgrounds or disabilities go to myABLEdriver versus, say, Uber, for example?
Well, moving forward, one of the things that we want to build is a vehicle that's we've tagged an enable vehicle. to literally carry people who are in wheelchairs. Our function, I guess, is making sure that people understand that it's not just about us driving around people who have got disabilities. It's about they're actually our employees primarily. In terms of where do we compare with rideshare, etc., look, our staff earn above the award rate. That's literally just so because we're essentially employing them part-time because some of them just can't work beyond 5 hours per shift. How do we actually make sure that we're looking after them and their lifestyle as such? So we pay them above the award rate. We know that rideshare doesn't do any of that. We pay our taxes. Rideshare, maybe not. So look, it's we think that this is actually driven primarily around our purpose. It's about our people, and we're fulfilling the gap. Rideshare, etc. They operate on a let's make a profit first function. We're on our people first. The profit will follow. We know that the profit will follow because we have this link, the magic that gets us into the corporates. And we're sticky, right? Because they have this, literally, I get so many messages from our client base back to the business saying, I can't believe I just had that ride with Livio or Eric or Matthew. It was like a TED talk for 40 minutes driving to the airport because these drivers, they're so inspirational that they've actually got off the couch and got themselves a job, and our client base love it. And so we become sticky. I mean, when's the last time you got out of an Uber and said, oh, that was a fantastic ride. I loved hearing about the plight of blah, blah, that this individual's concerned about. You know, it's a very different feeling when you're in the car with our guys.
Awesome. Thank you. So are you looking to scale this interstate?
Absolutely. If I could start in Sydney tomorrow, I would. Like literally, we had someone who saw the Birchal ad 2 weeks ago when it first launched for the expression of interest. He saw the ad, downloaded the app, booked work, and literally a pickup from his home in Hawthorn to the airport. And then not knowing that we didn't operate in Adelaide yet, he was getting off the plane in Adelaide and going to the Hilton Hotel, and he booked the job. I had to actually ring our app developers and say, hey, listen, can you switch off the interstate pickups because we can't do that yet. Didn't even think that that could be a problem, but it's a good thing to have, right? Is that we know that if we can build this model correctly and then scale interstate, is that someone gets in a car in Melbourne, in Hawthorn, goes to the airport, gets on a plane, flies to Sydney, gets off, books one of our cars to pick them up from Sydney, take them to the office, from the office to the hotel at the end of the day, back to the office the next day, back to the airport, Sydney airport that night, home to Melbourne, from the airport to their house. Like that's 6 rides in, 2.5 days. And that's really where the magic of this fits, right? So an Uber driver doesn't have that, a cab driver doesn't have that, but we can fulfill that. They won't always have the same driver. That's not necessarily the plan. The plan is that we've actually got lots of employees all doing the job. It's a bit like Macca's, right? Doesn't matter whether you're here or in Paris, the quarter pounder's a quarter pounder. And so we want our service to be that, but the joy that you get from the story of the driver will nearly always be different. Well, you might request the same driver. We'll try and facilitate that as often as possible. But, it's that diversity that also makes it so powerful.
For sure. So at the moment, what data do you collect from your customers and how do you keep this secure?
Okay, so everything is encrypted. The app, we can't see payment details or any of that sort of stuff in the background. It's all using an API direct from the app into Square, which is our billing system, and that's all encrypted. We can't see any of it. All we know is this is how much the job is to be charged at, and we see that the transaction has been completed. That's all we can see. The rest of it is all held securely by Square. In fact, I don't even think I could double check this, but I don't think the app even holds the data. It's all transferred directly into Square, and because of them being a multinational payment facility, they've got all of the security stuff way in advance of my pay scale.
That's great. Do you expect to have any issues around IP or people trying to potentially copy your business model?
Look, it's one of the things that we've discussed. We do have 7 years head start. So that's one upside. Look, they could try to copy it. How effective they would be, I don't know. It's taken a lot to get to this point. It is the one thing about, this Birchal platform, laying it all out on for everyone to see. They can actually see behind the scenes as to how we've actually put it all together now. And so I guess, look, there is a potential. What we do, well, what I think is that the likes of an Uber, they can't do what we do. They can't mimic it. And the reason being is that we are focused on our people, not on the profit. The profit will come as far as I'm concerned, but we focus on our people. And the cost model or the functional model of Uber is that we deliver the cheapest ride possible. We take our clip first, and then it's up to the driver to cover the rest of the costs. And that we've taken the exact opposite view, is that the company, until recently, it was all me, but the company owns all of the vehicles. We built the app. We own all of the danger. The drivers simply just fulfill the function of driving the client from A to B, and they get paid every single hour that they work. And so our model is so vastly different to Uber, and they have spent billions advertising the way that they offer. We're the antithesis of each other. We're the complete opposite. This is literally about our people and the magic that we can create for our clients. And so we close that loop. They can try and copy us. They won't. They can't. You won't speak to anyone on the board at Uber who talks about their business the same way I talk about this. Won't happen.
It's inspiring to see. So with your fleet of vehicles, how much have you spent on those, and what vehicles are they?
Okay, so we've got we started out with an array of different vehicles, and that was purely about what could we do with the money that we had at the time that we were doing it. We are currently still running a Porsche Cayenne, which is the large SUV. So that gives us the ability to carry lots of luggage with the client base. But everything moving, and we've got a Mercedes-Benz C-Class, we've got an Audi A8, we've got a Volkswagen CC, but they all look very different. They all function very differently. Our plan, which is already in place, is that everything will be Mercedes-Benz. Everything will be in Arctic silver. The cars will all look the same, branded quite subtly. So there'll be a logo on the front windscreen and the rear window. The side doors, there's a tiny little logo in the back quarter window. And part of that, Sally Cap actually asked the question, we've already been in trouble for riding around in chauffeured cars. How's this going to be different? I said, well, you'll actually want to be papped in our cars because we're a social enterprise and, we're fulfilling the ESG. So on the side windows, it just has our logo, our QR code, etc., so that people can download the app and actually then, more people book us, and we'll have personalized plates on all of the cars. All part of what this whole Birchal thing is about is how do we'll rapidly turn over the existing cars that we've got, except for the one Mercedes that we only bought 5 weeks ago. Everything else will get turned over into a similar sized Mercedes, and then we'll ramp up. So hopefully, with any sort of luck, before Christmas, we'll be at somewhere around about 15 to 18 cars here in Melbourne. And that'll be pretty exciting stuff.
Amazing. So is there any fear that if the government changes their mind on the subsidies that it could affect the business model?
No. So we use that's basically our lucky charm, that wage subsidy. We don't rely on it. So the cost model that we've got in place all functions on worst case scenario right across the board. So if we don't have wage subsidies, if we had to drive, loads of kilometers in between every single job, and so the most amount of fuel being used and wasted time and blah, blah, blah. Everything is built on that worst case scenario. The more things that fall in our favor, the more profitability we get. So every single vehicle that is costed out, we've catered for leasing payments, servicing, tires, the whole shoot match on how to actually run that vehicle. But if it turns out that we're traveling less kilometers per job or in between jobs, and we don't have and we do get the wage subsidy, our bottom line just gets fatter.
Great
Good
to
problem to have.
hear. Definitely. So would you consider utilizing modified vehicles to carry disabled passengers as well?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that's on it won't be in this very first stage of the Birchal raise, but it is one of the things that we've already investigated. We've found an application out of it's built in Germany, but it's being used in the UK, which is where I've seen it. And literally it's about, instead of you see the maxi taxis driving around. If you were the person in a wheelchair, that would be the most disheartening travel component of your life. You're basically in a cattle truck at the back. It's just, watching it for me is actually disheartening, right? When I know that there's a much better solution out there. So what we will shift to is having V-Class Mercedes-Benz vans with the Highline roof, and we'll use a side load function to actually allow people to enter the vehicle out of the side sliding door. So instead of them being down the back behind all of their family members stuck in a metal crate, literally the other family members will hop in and sit in the leather chairs, and our passengers, our VIP passenger who's in a wheelchair, will be side loaded into the vehicle and sit behind the front passenger, literally one row behind the driver, and be part of the family. It's such an exciting thing. Look, if we could double the Birchal raise, our target, if we could do that, we'd roll it out straight away. But the fit out of that vehicle alone, it's buy the vehicle and then you've nearly got to double the price to be able to fit it out. But it's just going to be one of those amazing things that we can then market heavily and go, don't travel down the back, sit up front and be part of the family. That's literally what it's all about. People.
So you mentioned yourself that these vehicles are quite expensive. Why have you gone down the route of Mercedes-Benz, for example, that might be a bit more expensive to purchase and to run?
The running factor doesn't come into it. They're basically all the same to run. We've gone with Mercedes-Benz purely safety. It was either them or Volvo, but Volvo don't have the array of vehicles that we need. So basically we'll run C-Class, E-Class, and V-Class vans. And then if we need to go to the Sprinter, we can even go to the Sprinter to give us a bit more carrying capacity in terms of passengers. But, bus type stuff is not really our thing. But it's literally about, how all of the vehicles that are available with Mercedes-Benz, we can get them all with every single safety feature in the world. For me personally, when Mercedes-Benz developed anti-lock brakes, they didn't patent it and hold it to themselves. They gave it to the rest of the world because they knew that it would save lives. That's a tick. There has to be, right? So, not easy to get a relationship with Mercedes-Benz. It took a lot of talking, but we've got one. And so can't wait to actually expand it out and show them exactly what it is that's part of it. And look, the end result for them was our client base, if it's in that corporate world, they are the Mercedes-Benz client, right? So if they're currently driving an Audi or a BMW or something, here's an opportunity for Mercedes-Benz to market to them by these people traveling in our vehicles. So it took a little bit to convince them, but we've got them over the line. Now it's just, how many cars can I buy?
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And we've run out of time, but if anybody does have any more questions for Sean, you can reach out via the Birchal platform. So if you go to the myABLEdriver profile, I'll actually pop that in the chat box. There's a message button and you can get in touch with Sean. Sean, I want to say thank you so much for your time today and for the passion that you've put into telling everybody all about the company, which is such an incredible lifeline, I want to say, to a lot of people. And it's so great to see what you're trying to achieve here. And if anybody does want to get involved, please head to the Birchal profile, express your interest if you haven't already, but we can't wait to see what you achieve. Thanks so much,
Great.
Sean.
Thanks, Emily.
Take care.
Bye.